Senior Policy Advisor. Welcome to both. 5 minutes for opening statement, Mr. Ihor.
Thank you, distinguished members of this committee. I'll be reading our statement, and then Otis will help me with the questions and answers. So, almost 1,400 days ago, on February 24th, 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. For more than 3 years, Russia has been committing genocide, attempting to annihilate the Ukrainian state and destroy its people. The Ukrainian people have for 3 years courageously defended their own freedom and the freedom and peace of Europe. We believe, and we know that you do too, that it is in Canada's national interest to ensure a strong, free, democratic Ukraine. Ukraine's victory is in Canada's interest and in the interest of the free world. We are grateful for the economic, humanitarian, and military support that Canada and our allies have provided. But so far, Ukraine has received only enough to survive, not to win. This must change, as the only path towards peace in Europe is Russian defeat. Whether or not a peace plan is adopted this week or next year, Russia will not abide by its terms. Therefore, military defeat of Russia is the only option. Russia has violated every single agreement and treaty it has entered into. In 1994, when Ukraine was pressured to give up its nuclear arsenal, Russia, the US, and the UK pledged to protect Ukrainian sovereignty. None of the signatories of the Budapest Memorandum have lived up to its terms, and there was a failure to respond to Russian invasion of Crimea and the Donbass. The full-scale invasion of 2022 shocked the world. Even when the 3-day special operation failed abysmally, there was reluctance to let Ukraine finish the job. Ukrainians do not ask for our boots on the ground. They ask for weapons to do the jobs themselves. Since January 2025, the calculus has changed dramatically. The entire world is recalibrating as a result of our capricious neighbor to the south. Canada has been forced to fortify our economy and our defense sector. The recently passed budget reflects increased spending on defense in line with our NATO commitments, and Canada can now prioritize joint ventures with Ukraine's world-class defense sector. We should invest in partnerships that provide a win-win. We should invest in what is good for Canada, but it can also be good for Ukraine. For example, the proposed production of Gripen fighter aircraft in Canada would create thousands of jobs, but also help produce the aircraft destined for Ukraine. We therefore encourage Canada to focus on 3 policy pillars. First, strengthen defense ties to increase the delivery of military assistance to Ukraine and increase joint production. Second, strengthen commercial ties to increase support for Canadian private sector investment in Ukraine, including domestic energy production increase to replace Russian energy. Thirdly, to defend shared values to make Russia pay for its aggression by working with allies to seize the $300 billion in frozen Russian assets and make them available to Ukraine. We need to increase sanctions on Russia in the energy sector, which continues to fund their war machine, to support the prosecution of war crimes and crimes against humanity, and endorse the Special Tribunal of Crime of Aggression established by the Council of Europe. In taking these steps, the Canadian government will have the strong support of the public. Recent polling showed that 77% of Canadians support stronger sanctions on Russia, 70% support seizing Russian assets, and 65% support increased military in training. We stress the urgency in moving as quickly as possible to increase support to Ukraine and increase pressure on Russia. Just this week, people have been killed, 35 in Ternopil, yesterday 4 in Kharkiv, today 2 in Dnipro, overnight 7 killed in Kyiv. These Russian attacks on Ukrainian civilians occur every night. Unable to defeat Ukraine on the battlefield, Russia is terrorizing the Ukrainian civilian population to make towns and cities unlivable. Russia's depraved attacks include targeting innocent people, including children, in their homes. These are war crimes and crimes against humanity. Finally, a short word about the so-called U.S. peace plan that was leaked, most likely by Russia, to the press last Thursday. The 28 points of this plan amounted to, should they have been accepted, a Ukrainian capitulation. The UCC agrees with the position of Canada and our allies who were united and underlined the point that we are clear on the principles of borders not being changed by force and concern on the proposed limitations on the Ukrainian armed forces, which would leave Ukraine vulnerable to future attack. It's our position as the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress that Canada and our allies must increase pressure on Russia to force them to stop their invasion of Ukraine. We believe that putting pressure on Ukraine, as the U.S. administration has been doing, only emboldens Russia and makes peace less likely. Appeasement will not lead to peace. Occupation is not peace. It appears in the days since the so-called plan was published, negotiations have begun between the U.S. and Ukraine. As many of the components of the peace plan are within the purview of the EU and NATO, it is critical that they are also at the table. We welcome your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your remarks. We now open the floor to questions from colleagues, beginning with MP Ziad Abul Taif. You have 6 minutes.
Well, thanks for appearing before committee and welcome again. And the question is the Ukrainian diaspora in Canada is very important, very influential, and has been very active since the invasion, and even since 2014 when the first invasion against Crimea. What role the community is playing to help releasing those children, or to help at least addressing this issue properly for the Canadian public? It is very important to educate Canadian public about what's going on. We're not talking 5 or 10,000. We're probably talking millions plus children since 2014, and some under the occupation of Crimea and the new territories that have been taken by Russia. So the role of the community is important. Will be, I think, important for this study to brief us on the role of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. And we were pleased to see the witnesses that you had preceding us. I think the community has taken two important roles. First, to publicize and promote and inform Canadians, all Canadians, of this issue, whether it's in the media or in our local communities, working with other ethnocultural communities, Canadians at large, to make sure that people understand. There are a number of films, there are a number of public speakers. The second thing is more direct support, as was mentioned by Mr. Kuleba, the Canada-Ukraine Foundation and other organizations which are funded by our community members, but also by Canadians at large, are supporting the direct efforts of these organizations and engaging in fundraising and efforts to make sure that they can increase their capacity.
The one of the biggest problem in this for the children is, or the biggest challenge is what Russia is doing to change the mindset, the belief, and the way. I mean, even as far as the parenthood. I mean, these kids will be told that, you know, this is your new mom, this is your dad, this is new nationality. And we all know that I really like to reemphasize this point that one of Russia's objectives of the war is the Ukrainian population. So we need to see how we're gonna work around this. It's a big challenge, and we know that Putin is a dictator, and that's what he's been doing. And the biggest victim is Ukraine and Ukrainian people, as we know and we speak about. The role of the community is important on gathering information, knowing what we know, trying to report the names of these children and the numbers. How do you describe the role of the community here as far as this topic? Because I think one of the gaps that we see is on the numbers. Okay, someone talking about 1,800, something about 20,000, but we're talking about way more than that, and that takes lots of time and effort to be able to be accurate on the data we have, so at least we know what to fight for and what to negotiate for. Again, the role of the community. How does the community help handle this whole challenge? I think something we'd like to know.
Well, I mean, as you say, it's an enormously difficult problem because partly because getting accurate data is difficult, and so the representative of the Yale Humanitarian Lab, I'm sure, spoke with you about that. I mean, in terms of what we encourage here in our community is anyone who has any information that they can share to reach out to the RCMP, which has a program that collects evidence on Russian war crimes, not only specifically against children, but in general on Russian war crimes and crimes against humanity. So people who are here who fled Ukraine certainly should be reaching out to the RCMP with any information that they have. Mr. Kuleba's organization, as Ihor mentioned, is supported by the Canada-Ukraine Foundation to do a lot of its work. But yes, this is a incredibly difficult issue to address because these kids are abducted and either in Russia or in occupied territories, and it's very difficult to get accurate information and to get these children out, as you heard earlier today. But we are I think, thankful to Canada for leading, together with Ukraine, this coalition. Certainly the resources of the government are greater than that of the community, and we're grateful to see the government take a lead on it.
Do you have, as Canada is the co-chair of the International Coalition on returning the Ukrainian children, do you have any recommendation for the government of Canada and or advice on how to really be more effective in this almost impossible mission?
I would say, given we were invited to the conference in Montreal last year, certainly growing the international partnership to engage with more multinational partners who can engage with Russia and assist. And of course, we would never be against devoting more resources, whether it's staff time, funding systems, or funding NGOs, ensuring that everything that Mr. Kuleba and his team are doing is fully funded, that there should be no lack of resources in their work.
Thank you very much. We next go to MP James Maloney. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, very much. I want to thank both of you gentlemen, not only for being here today, but for all the work you do, which I am very familiar with. Without the two of you and your entire organization, the Canadian government would be in a much less capable of doing what it's able to do. So I just want to say thank you. We're here talking about children today, and I want to touch on that beginning. We're talking about the removal of children from Ukraine. I had the chance to go to Kyiv last September, and while I was there, I was invited by some of my counterparts to go visit the children's hospital, Akhmedut. The removal of Ukrainian children is one thing, but the intentional attack on a children's hospital, it was not an act of war, it was an act of evil. I was aware of it, I had read about it on the news, I'd seen it on the news, but I wasn't fully prepared to see what I did that day. This isn't a question, just a reminder to people who are watching today about the horrors and the atrocities that are actually going on there. The only thing I could compare it to would be like walking up University Avenue, turning a corner and seeing Sick Children's Hospital completely annihilated by bombs. It was a day I will never forget. The second, I was going to talk to you about the peace plan, but given your opening remarks, I think I might stay away from that because you don't have much faith in the outcome of that. And I would suggest your comments about Russia's intentions are accurate, given one of the terms, I believe, was to reduce the size of Ukraine's military. So I will turn to the issue about seizing Russian assets. This is an important issue. I've been involved in discussions with you in the past about this. The Canadian government has taken steps so far. What specific steps could Canada be taking now, in your opinion, to move this forward? And I'll use an example. I pass Pearson Airport at least twice a week, and I see that Russian aircraft on the tarmac. The Canadian government has commenced legal proceedings to move to the next stage of seizing that asset so it can be converted to be used for the benefit of Ukraine. So I'd like your insight on that. Thank you.
So from what we know, there is relatively small amount of Russian assets frozen in Canada. But what Canada can do is move to seize those as both an example to the rest of the world and as legal test cases, because the effort to seize the assets that are held in Europe is something that has, to my knowledge anyway, never been attempted before on the scale that I think is coming, and it's over 300 billion in assets held in Euroclear and other European institutions. The assets Canada has, for example, that the government announced that they were going to go after Roman Abramovich's assets that are frozen in Canada. That seems to me to be a good place to start as a test case, and then that can be used by other jurisdictions to seize the assets that are in their jurisdictions. The plane is another example, but this is in some sense uncharted territory for Canada and our partners. And so in our view, the quicker we start doing it, the quicker we can see where perhaps we need, legislative changes or legal changes and how to approach the seizure of what is really the vast majority of those assets are held in Euroclear in Belgium. And so I think Canada, both, again, as an example and as a kind of test case for it, is a good place to start, largely because we know the political will is here to do it, which is not necessarily true of all of our European partners.
On the Euroclear piece, is there any time sensitivity to what needs to be done with respect to the assets involving Euroclear?
Sensitivity is that Ukraine needs support and needs it quickly. I mean, the other issue is that a lot of these assets are frozen because of European Union sanctions that require unanimity to be rolled over every 6 months and continued every 6 months. And so, so far the governments in Europe who are not friendly to Ukraine, like Hungary or Slovakia, have gone along with continuing to seize those assets, but that's not a guarantee that they will do so in the future. So I think the urgency is both Ukraine's needs and any sort of political situation in Europe that is getting consensus amongst 27 countries is always going to be a problem, right? So
there's obviously urgency on the part of Ukraine, but it was the other part. It's the unanimous approach that's needed. Are you aware of any a situation where that unanimous approval might stop anytime in the near future?
I mean, nothing specific except the sort of general political direction of a few of the European governments, and also the need to convince the Belgian government that this is something that a lot of the resistance to doing this, a lot of the resistance to the European Commission is coming from Belgium, which where Euroclear is located, and who are, as far as I can tell, worried about any liability that may come to the Belgian government itself. So.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now go to MP Duceppe. You have 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I thank the witnesses for being with us. I'll give you a second to put your earpieces on. Thank you so much for that. I won't spend too much time on this, but I do want to get back to the topic. In your opening statements, you discussed recent news in the Journal de Montréal, a Montreal newspaper. The title is Ukraine is about to accept a peace plan negotiated by Donald Trump. I would like to know what your position is on that, your feelings about that, and then we'll get to another topic.
Thank you for the question. And as we mentioned, there's day by day, hour by hour changes and negotiations to the various peace plans that are being discussed. What we believe as a principle is that Ukraine must be at the table, that nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. We believe that Canada and our partners have an important role to adhere to that principle, to put pressure on the American administration as well. And we are concerned about where things have begun. But we are hopeful that with the intervention of the Ukrainian government and with the intervention of allies, that the peace process which Ukraine wants will end up in a favorable condition for it. But we cannot accept that the 28 points that were the opening statement of loss of territory, loss of sovereignty, loss of control over military, those are not acceptable peace plans for, I think, any of us here.
Merci beaucoup pour la réponse.
Thank you very much for that answer. The ambassador came recently to our committee in in the context of this current study and told us about agreements already in place between, let's say, Ukraine and Denmark for producing drones in exchange for technology from Ukraine. And the ambassador told us that Ukraine is looking for other such partnerships. Could Canada play an important role in that sort of an agreement where Canada would go and learn about new technological capacities and offer production facilities? Does that seem doable, and does it seem like a good idea to you?
Absolutely. We all, I think, are increasingly understanding that Ukraine is at the forefront of adapting, in real-time battlefield technology, whether it's AI-powered or mechanical, or whether it's drone warfare or other. The Ukrainian capacity for innovation is something that we can adapt. I was at the Canadian Security Show this year, and the Ukrainians that were here from the delegation, their tech is far ahead of where our domestic manufacturers are, and I think that once peace comes for Ukraine, they will be able to show the world, especially their allies, this tech. So there are examples of how funding production in Ukraine is a better, more efficient, faster way to get them the things that they need, rather than producing and shipping and being stuck in processes. We believe that's a powerful example, but we also think that joint production between Canada and Ukraine is a good economic measure for us to take that technology in partnership and to embrace it here.
On a parlé tantôt de saisie.
We have mentioned fund seizure. We haven't mentioned sanctions much in this discussion here today, but to start with, do you think that sufficient sanctions have been imposed on specific persons in Russia? Do you want more of them? And do you think that the sanctions now imposed are working? And if so, do you think it would be smart to bring in more sanctions?
Yeah, I mean, our consistent position has been that Canada and our partners need to significantly increase pressure on Russia, and our best way to do that is to increase economic sanctions in order to stop revenue flows to Russia. Now, there are areas in Canada that we don't do a lot of business with Russia, but we have some exemptions on certain goods that we believe should be canceled. I think the easiest way to do these things is to just stop trading with Russia entirely. And so, our kind of consistent position has been that we want to see a full trade embargo with Russia. And we believe that should Canada do that, that would be an example for other countries who still do a significant amount of business with Russia, and most importantly in Europe. So that would, our request of the government is a full trade embargo and much stronger economic sanctions on Russia.
Et si je peux me permettre, si jamais vous avez...
And if I may, if you have in your documents any impression that anyone who we have sanctions on has somehow been escaping sanctions, could you please provide those names to us and provide them in a brief, in a letter to the committee? You don't need to say things out loud here, but if you provide us with that information, it really would be very much appreciated. I would like to quickly go back to the children who've been kidnapped, taken to Russia, abducted. Is Canada doing enough? I know that Canada has expressed its opinion, but could Canada do more for this issue, perhaps offering psychological assistance to the children who have managed to be rescued? Could that be something Canada could do? Could we do more in that way?
I don't think there's any sense of somebody doing too much in this sphere. So I think we, as a community, are supporting the organizations. We urge the government to support those organizations who do the direct work, the difficult work, We look forward to opportunities to work with parliamentarians to promote the issue to the Canadian public, but there's no limit, no amount of funding or support would be too much in this sphere, unfortunately, until every child is returned. And so I would say that there's no names we can give you today, but there's sort of a lot of organizations working in the sphere. You've just met some of them who have capacity and have interest in Ukraine and have experience and a successful track record, and we should continue to support them fully.
Thank you very much. Thank you to both our witnesses for joining us today and for your testimony. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much. We will briefly suspend the meeting to proceed to an in-camera session so that the folks here can be ready for that.